Welcome to Off the Wall. My name is Trey. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have no shortage of things to get into. We'll dive right in here in a bit. We've got 10 games that took place this past weekend between the IFL and AFL, 7 in the IFL and 3 in the AFL. So we'll dive into each of those, get an idea of where the teams are in the landscape of each league and what the playoff picture is starting to look like for each, as well as previewing what next week may look like as well. Then we've got an interview with LJ McConnell, who is a defensive back and kick returner for the Frisco Fighters. He's had some electrifying plays so far this year on both sides of the ball and returning kicks. Currently leads the league in interceptions and had a game-winning kick return for a touchdown a few weeks back against San Diego. So we'll talk about his football journey, this year's Frisco team, and his own podcast that he has called Unphazed that we'll dive into in a little bit, and we'll give a little more details on that. But before we dive into anything, please give us a follow on all of our social pages if you don't already, at Off the Wall FB, F as in foot, B as in ball, Off the Wall FB. We're on Instagram, X, aka Twitter, and TikTok on each of those. Try to post as often as possible and be involved and active on each. Post different types of content on each. So if you're on all three, please give us a follow on all three. If you're only on one or two, we'll take that too. Give us a follow on just the one or two. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a little thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying what we're doing so far. And if you're listening on Spotify or listening on Apple Podcasts, please give us a 5-star rating, preferably it's like the show page on Spotify. I think you just click to About. And on Apple Podcasts, if you're on the phone, I think you just scroll all the way to the bottom, and that's where the ratings are. So every rating that you submit helps the algorithm feed us to other people so that they can consume it, and we can keep growing this thing, because we're seeing some good growth on some of the social pages, and starting to see some of that growth translate to the podcast numbers and the YouTube numbers as well. So looking to get this thing continuing to grow as big as it can get. And without further ado, let's dive right into some IFL. First game we're going to talk about is the Quad City Steamwheelers at the Green Bay Blizzard, and Green Bay won this game 64-36. So a real blowout for Green Bay. And starting with Green Bay, they're quietly getting better every single week, especially on offense. And quarterback Max Mailer, he's starting to insert himself in the MVP conversation. It seemed like we had a couple runaway candidates early on in the year, but he's been consistently getting better each week. And when you look at his numbers on the season so far, 157 passing yards per game, 27 passing touchdowns versus only 4 interceptions, 21 rushing touchdowns on the year. That's 48 combined touchdowns, and we're barely halfway through the season, just over halfway, and he's got that many. So this offense, in this game in particular, it was interesting to see how they operated, because it seemed like a light snow flurry at the beginning where I was like, oh, all right, we're getting some jabs, we're getting some punches. And then it just eventually became heavy snowfall that turned into an avalanche of points. You get where I'm going with the blizzard, snow, avalanche, all the cold thing. I'm trying over here, okay? But the Blizzard team, they're unbelievable, and this is by far the most dominant Green Bay Blizzard team that we've seen in the IFL over the years. And the fact that they've been able to dominate against some pretty quality opponents. It's a shame they don't get to play any Western Conference opponents this year. Their entire schedule is only Eastern, but from the teams that they do play on a week in, week out basis, they do a really good job, and they're only getting better from here. The defense continues to improve each week as well. Lots of pressure on the QB, which causes lots of turnovers. And as a team, listen to these stats. They have the least points per game allowed on defense, the most sacks, tied for second in the league in interceptions, tied for first in forced fumbles, and they're holding their opponents to 33% conversion percentage on third down. Those are all ridiculous, all to have stacked on top of each other. And Green Bay defensively just suffocates offenses. And if the offense can get out to a sizable lead like they have the past couple of weeks, that number 1 rated pass defense just suffocates the opposing offense. And that's the recipe for victory for Green Bay. So great defense, great offense now. They're looking like the team to beat in the East, or one of the 2 teams to beat in the East right now. But on the other side, Quad City, in the past, we've talked about, all right, no, Mike Irwin is the starting quarterback. No, Judd Erickson is the starting quarterback. No, back to Mike Irwin. The old saying, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. And they keep jockeying between the two quarterbacks here, whether it be due to injury, whether it be due to poor performance. And they're not as good as they can be as a result of it. I would almost rather see them ride out one quarterback this entire time rather than constantly switching back and forth the way that they have. And all year, the gripe with Quad City is they just got to get this quarterback situation figured out and they'll be fine. Their offense outside of quarterback is a very good offense. Great skill position players all across the board. On defense, they have playmakers. They can cause turnovers. Their kicker is incredible. He had a magnificent week a few weeks back. The team is great. They just have to get the quarterback situation figured out, and they just can't seem to do that. I don't know if the answer is bringing in somebody else that may have gotten released or is willing to get traded from another team, or is it just sticking with one of the two guys that's already in-house? I don't know. But constantly jockeying back and forth, 2 games of this guy, 3 games of this guy, 2 games of this guy, back to another 2 games of this guy, it's not working. And Quad City right now is in the 4th position in the Eastern Conference playoffs, but they're not doing themselves any favors to keep that position right now. They're just not. And heading into this game, the Green Bay Blizzard defense, they were ranked number 1 in pass defense in the league. Number 1. No team was better. But they were ranked number 12 in rushing defense. So if you're the Quad City offensive coordinator or the head coach, you would think that, hey, I have a running back named PJ Vander who's pretty good at running the ball. We're going up against a team that has the very best passing defense, but a rushing defense that leaves a little bit to be desired. I think we should probably run the ball with our running back who is very, very good and use that as a way to control the game. And they didn't do that. PJ Vander on the day had 5 carries for 19 yards and 2 touchdowns. When he got the ball, he was effective and he was impactful. They just were not running the ball with him. And it's mind-boggling. It's like, why did they not do this? They were like insistent on trying to nickel and dime them with the passing game against the number 1 passing defense when the rushing opportunities were right there. And the fact that Mike Irwin at quarterback got the majority of rushing attempts on read option plays, that's not good. Like PJ Vander is a great athlete and he is a fantastic running back. He needed to be fed the ball in order to have a chance at winning this game, and they just didn't do that. So it's puzzling to me. The opportunity was right there, but they just got to a point where they were down 25, 30 points and they had no choice but to pass the ball. And when you have no choice but to pass the ball against the best passing defense in the league, that's a recipe for disaster. It's not good. So Quad City, they just didn't do a good job of utilizing their strength against their opponent's weakness, which should be a no-brainer in these types of situations. So they're not out of the playoff picture just yet, but they're not doing themselves any favors either. The next game we're going to talk about is the Arizona Rattlers at the Jacksonville Sharks, and Arizona won this game 62-41. So we're going to start with the Jacksonville Sharks here, and Jacksonville changed starting quarterbacks again in this game. They had N'Kosi Perry, who is famous for going to the Miami Hurricanes and FAU in college. He got his first start, and he looked really good in the first half. They utilized him on quarterback draws. They did some option plays. They really utilized his athleticism, and they were able to keep up with Arizona in the first half of this game. In fact, at halftime, the score was 35-34, and Jacksonville was right there. They were staying with them. But as has been the case with Jacksonville all year, first half, they had a pretty good half, pretty decent half. They just fell apart in the second half. Again, they were down 35-34 at the end of the first half, but they got outscored 27-7 in the second half to end the game. They had every opportunity to stay in this game and ultimately take control of this game, but they just didn't. They didn't make the adjustments that were necessary, and Arizona did. Arizona's veteran coaching staff in the IFL knew the adjustments they had to make, and it still seems like that Jacksonville's team as a whole at every level is still wrapping their brain around what it takes to be competitive in the IFL, and they haven't put together a full 4 quarters of football in the majority of their games this year. They just haven't. and they've already started the fire sale of their roster. Some of their players that have been around for a couple of years were either traded or released and have signed with some AFL teams. So it seems like they're really going young with the roster and seeing what these younger guys can do, and hopefully try to put together some pieces to build on going forward. And but yeah, Jacksonville, it's a tough spot to be in if you're a Jacksonville fan, because the fan base that they've developed over the years, they've been a team in the AFL and the NAL for over 10 years at this point, close coming up on 15 years. So they have quite the fan base that they've developed, and this team is just not worthy of the fan base support that they have right now. So hopefully they'll be able to get some new blood in the lineup and be able to cause a little bit of havoc in the back half of the season. But this was yet another example of them falling apart in the second half and not being able to close out games. And for Arizona, they had a little bit of a scare hanging in with Jacksonville. So Arizona was favored by double digits heading into this, and Jacksonville was going shot for shot with them in terms of the touchdowns in the first half. Arizona, um, Arizona's quarterback Dalton Snead and running back Shannon Brooks, they maintained control of this game for the most part and showed why they are one of the most dangerous quarterback running back duos in the entire league. Wide receiver Corey Reed Jr. has also asserted himself in the passing game, and he is turning into a really great weapon for this Arizona offense. He's able to stretch the field. On the very first play from scrimmage for Arizona, he caught a 40 plus yard bomb that brought it down to like the 2 or 3 yard line. They were able to punch it in. So that set the tone early on that they had to account for the deep ball. And when you're worried about the deep ball against a team that has Shannon Brooks and Dalton Snead, you're going to get diced up on the intermediate passing game, the short passing game, and the running game. So Corey Reed Jr. is what they've needed in terms of the deep throw. And Arizona's starting to get into a groove on offense, and they're making the necessary adjustments that Jacksonville couldn't make, especially on defense. Beginning of the year, Arizona's defense was horrendous. They were not good, but they've really tightened things up in the second half of a bunch of these games, and they're able to keep up with the rest of the West in the playoff hunt right now. They're sitting at 6-4, which is tied for fourth right now. They're on the outside looking in on the playoffs, but as long as they keep winning, as long as they can keep up, that's all they need to do, and that's all they can do. Just play the schedule that's ahead of them and see how it works out. But Arizona's getting better every single week, and they had a rough start to the season, but they've been on a bit of a tear since Dalton Snead came back. So it'll be interesting to see how they can continue to go from here, and they're going to have to dethrone a couple teams that they play to potentially leapfrog some people into the playoff hunt. But the West is super stacked this year, so we're going to have a very good team on the outside looking in. So we'll just have to see if it's Arizona. Next game we're going to talk about is the Iowa Barnstormers at the Sioux Falls Storm, and Iowa won this game 47-45. So early in the week, Iowa made some roster moves at the quarterback position. Quarterback Kyle King, who had been the starting quarterback for past 5-6 weeks heading into last week, was injured, and they needed some new blood in the mix. So they ended up trading for quarterback Daniel Smith, who played for Tulsa a little bit earlier this year and played for Iowa last year, and they released Darius James Peterson. Daniel Smith played for the Barnstormers last year. Like I said, he saw action in 12 games and returned this year after playing in 8 games for Tulsa. Tulsa ended up trading him to Tucson. Tucson ended up trading him to Iowa. Not sure why or how that went down the way it did, but I'm just telling you what the transaction list on Go IFL is saying. But they traded him to Iowa, and he almost immediately stepped in as the starter, and he looked great. He looked great as soon as he got in there. He went 18 for 26 with 179 passing yards and 5 passing touchdowns, and he provided that spark that the Barnstormers have needed to have any chance of making the playoffs this season. And with Quad City losing the way that they did and Iowa winning this game, Quad City's at 4-5. Iowa's at 3-7 right now. The gap is not nearly as wide as you would think it is, as it may look on paper. So Iowa still has a fighter's chance. I counted them out a few weeks ago, but the way Daniel Smith played, if he can provide this type of spark and Iowa's defense can step up in those crucial spots like they did against Sioux Falls, Iowa could sneak into the playoffs and be a sneaky team to look out for that you'd have to account for. And on the other side, For Sioux Falls, this might be a wrap for them. They're sitting at 2-7 right now. Offensively, they weren't bad. They were able to move the ball up and down the field. They just had a couple of costly turnovers that ended up being the difference in the game and really was the dagger. They did a pretty good job of distributing the ball amongst their playmakers. They had 5 different players with rushing touchdowns, which is pretty impressive. You usually see rushing touchdowns get stacked onto one person throughout a game, but they managed to get 5 different people a rushing touchdown, which is pretty cool. But they just couldn't get enough out of their passing game for the win. And it feels like if they had Lorenzo Brown Jr. from the beginning of the season, this season might have turned out a little bit different, but he had retired and they were going in a new direction. So um, they slipped to 2-7 on the year, and they'll have to basically run the board, assuming that Quad City can get their act together. Because I guess at 2-7 they're not technically out of it. If Iowa's not technically out of it at 3-7, but they got to start stringing together some wins as soon as possible here, because any further losses is only going to make it that much more difficult. So they're basically going to have to run the board to potentially sneak into the playoffs here, which if they can play mistake-free football is highly possible, but they haven't really proven that they can do that in the majority of the games they've played this year. The next game we're going to talk about is the Massachusetts Pirates at the Frisco Fighters, and Frisco won this game 52-48. So starting with Frisco, this was TJ Edwards' first game back from injury. About 20-30 minutes before kickoff, Frisco's social media made the announcement that he was back and he was warming up. And he looked great. He started off a little rusty in the first quarter, which is to be expected when you miss a couple games worth of action, but he really ended up turning it on in the second quarter and beyond. He accounted for 3 touchdowns through the air and 2 on the ground. Wide receiver Cole Blackman also had a very strong game. He led the team with 5 catches for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Edwards looked very mobile and back to his MVP form in the second half. He knocked off the rust in the first half, and he was finding ways to extend drives, and he just has such a unique ability to turn nothing into something and then turn just something into a big play. There were a couple situations where Massachusetts' defense read the play perfectly, but TJ was able to just make a play happen. So there was one play in particular, I believe it was late in the third quarter or early in the fourth quarter. They were driving, and it was a read option play that they had run a few times already in the game, or in the half even. So they ran the option play, and the defense closed on it perfectly. They shut down both options on it, but TJ was able to tuck the ball from the running back, make a move, and turn what should have been a loss of 2 into a gain of 4 or 5. And so that's got to be so frustrating as a defense, where you do everything the right way, but you still can't seem to bring them down and can't seem to get them off the field. So that's what TJ Edwards brings, and that's why he is the reigning MVP from last season. So it's some exciting times ahead for Frisco's offense, especially if they play anywhere close to what they did against Massachusetts, who has a really good defense in their own right. So the fact that they were able to put 52 on a really good defense in Massachusetts, the rest of the East that they play this year, they better look out, because Frisco's coming and they have yet to reach their full potential, which is scary. On the other side, for the Pirates, it's unfortunate that they lost, but this was a step in the right direction for them and their offense. And this was also the first game that Isaac Zico was back from the injured list, and he had missed a month of action. And so you look at the Pirates roster, and there are so many players on the offensive side where you could say, like, oh, that guy's the most important player on the team. Alejandro Benefield, quarterback. Quarterback's usually most important. Jimmy Robinson, extraordinary running back. You can make the case that he's the most important. Thomas Owens at wide receiver, career leader in a bunch of different categories for the Pirates. But I think the most important player on this Pirates offense is Isaac Zico. In games where Isaac Zico has played, Massachusetts is scoring 44 points per game. In games where Zico did not play, they're only scoring 35 points per game. So Isaac Zico is accounting for 9 points on the final count for the Pirates, statistically, game by game this year. That's insane to think about. And when you watch this game in particular, you understand why. He runs a lot of hitch routes, a lot of short routes where he'll catch it for 5 yards, gain another 2 or 3. 7 yards a pop, that's impactful, that's efficient. And he was able to rip a couple catches for some big yardage in that. So he seems to be the straw that stirs the drink for the Pirates. And if he had played these past 5 weeks, I don't think that Massachusetts would have found themselves in the situation they were in on offense. But he ended up having 7 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown, and he was clearly the receiver that Benefield relied on the most throughout the game. Benefield checked it down to Robinson a ton in the first half, but consistently throughout the game, Zico was the primary target, and for good reason. Although they did progress, it does feel like the Pirates' offense is still a little hesitant to pull the trigger at times. There were multiple plays all throughout the game where it just seemed like the quarterback was holding on to the ball for way too long, missing the window on some check down plays. And late in the game, they were able to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and the offense started moving and grooving. They started to find their rhythm. But I just think that the quarterback is holding onto the ball for way too long, far too often, and that's holding this team back. So I think going forward, Pirates need to get the ball out of Benefield's hands a lot quicker, whether that be to Jimmy Robinson, to Thomas Owens, to Isaac Zico, whoever it is. You have all these weapons to choose from. Get it out of his hands as soon as possible. You won't be as impacted by the pass rush. You'll be able to let your playmakers make plays, and that's worked in the past for the Pirates. And in the late in the second half of this game, it worked as well as they were trying to make a comeback. It's a step in the right direction, but still some work to do for Massachusetts. Next game we're going to talk about is the San Diego Strike Force at the Tulsa Oilers, and San Diego won this game 42-34. So starting with San Diego, going into this game, you kind of got the feeling that San Diego was going to come in and just control this game from start to finish, primarily because the Oilers' offense has not been good. Let's just call it for what it is. They have not been good. But the Strike Force were able to come into Tulsa, and they maintained control of this game from start to finish. They had a slightly bumpy start, had a turnover on downs early, but beyond that, they were able to drive the length of the field multiple times, score touchdowns, and keep Tulsa out of the end zone on when San Diego was on defense. So San Diego definitely controlled this game from start to finish. Nate Davis had a great game at quarterback, had 196 yards and 5 touchdowns, and all-purpose player, athlete, whatever description you want to use for Rudy Johnson. He's played running back this year, wide receiver, quarterback. He returns kicks. He's played on defensive back a few times this year. Just an overall well-rounded player. He stepped in at running back for the bulk of the carries, and he had some really impressive deep ball catches as well to keep things moving for San Diego. So San Diego looked really good. They had a great game overall, despite the fact that they let a spread of -8 go from a surefire winner to a push. Go check out the Off the Wall Instagram for a reel that kind of breaks down how that went down. Won't get into details now. Don't want to get too fired up. But besides that, San Diego played a great game. And on the other side, Tulsa's offense is very, very, very bad. 3 varies. That's how bad they are. They scored 34 points in this game, but when you kind of break down how those were scored, it wasn't even that much. So 7 of those 34 came on a kick return touchdown to open the second half. 6 of that came on a gifted ball placement at the 1-yard line with seconds left in the game. So bring that down to 21. So they only scored 21 points on offense throughout this entire game. 21 points in the IFL is not good. Let's just come out and say it. It's not good. The past 2 weeks combined, Tulsa's offense has scored 41 points in 2 games put together. San Diego scored 42 in this game alone. So Tulsa is down bad, and I don't know what you do to fix it. Part of the issue is that Tulsa doesn't have an offensive identity, and I don't know if they know what they want to be at this point. They had an offensive identity early when they won 3 of their first 5 games, and they started to figure some things out, but they just haven't had that over the past 5-6 weeks or so, dating back to when Daniel Smith was traded from the team for reasons that are unclear. Probably some behind the scenes stuff that we don't know about or hasn't been very public, but you look at the timeline and it kind of makes sense. Andre Sale is much less of a dual threat than Daniel Smith was, but it seems like they're still trying to use some of those elements in the offense here. But he's also not as good of a quarterback to really be an air raid focused throw system either. So they're in a tricky situation where they don't have an identity based on their players, but they don't have the players to fulfill the identity that they had earlier in the season, if that makes sense. And when you don't have a dual threat quarterback in the IFL, it really limits what you can do on offense. But then if you don't have a dual threat quarterback, you really need to run the ball with your skill position players. And Tulsa was just not able to do that. And they weren't committing to do it either. A couple times they did some handoffs to some of the skill position guys. They fumbled the handoff, or they took the handoff and fumbled it after running 3 or 4 steps. So Tulsa needs to focus on running the ball up the middle a lot more. I understand they have some health issues at the running back position right now, and they've got some wide receivers doing a lot of running, but you need to be able to run the ball because they tried passing this game. They completed less than 50% of their passes. So when you're passing focused and you're completing less than 50%, that's not going to work. That's not going to cut it. So they were gifted some points late that made this game look a lot closer than it actually was. But Tulsa's going through a major identity crisis that they don't know who they are. We don't know who the heck they are. And offensively, they're in a lot of trouble. And they could really use somebody like a Daniel Smith right now. The next game we're going to talk about is the Northern Arizona Wranglers at the Vegas Nighthawks. And Northern Arizona won this game 58-52. So an upset in Vegas. Northern Arizona, they are a legit force in the West. This was kind of them kicking the door down, saying like, "Hey, we're here. You're going to have to deal with us." Quarterback Josh Jones, he just continues to impress week after week, not just with his playmaking ability, but his ability to avoid the big one, avoid making that costly mistake that costs his team the game, or making multiple costly mistakes that we've seen cost other teams the game so far this week. Last year, the Wranglers had a really dynamic offense with talented pieces across the board, but they just had a ton of turnovers. Now they have a very dynamic offense with a lot less turnovers, and you see they're sitting at 7-3 right now. So they're looking really good, and they do a really great job of spreading the ball around. They've done that all year. Jones led an incredible drive down the field to win the game. He scored on a winning touchdown run with 14 seconds left. So this was the Wranglers announcing their presence in the West, and they are sitting solo in the third spot right now in the playoff picture. And if they're able to do this against Vegas, they've got a couple more key matchups against Bay Area coming up, and a couple other teams in the West. We could see them continue to rise up the rankings, and we could see them be quite a problem for some teams in the playoffs. On the other side, Vegas was without quarterback Jerome Johnson, and so George Reyna got the start. Reyna played pretty good in this one. He looked really good through the air and pretty good on the ground as well, but he just had a tough interception to start the game, which kind of put them behind a possession, and it enabled Northern Arizona to score a touchdown to start the first half and score a touchdown to start the second half. And when you look at the final, it's a one possession game. So even though that turnover was early, that ended up being the one that flipped the momentum from that point on. The good news is that they went toe to toe without Jerome Johnson. But the bad news is this is the second time that Jerome Johnson has missed time due to an injury. So with Jerome Johnson in the lineup, this team is dangerous. They can score at any moment in the game from anywhere on the field. But the last 2 games that they've lost, they're on a 2-game losing streak now. It's happened because Johnson either A, wasn't able to finish the game due to injury, or B, missed it entirely due to injury, which was this one. So when he's in the game and healthy, Johnson and the Nighthawks are a unbelievable team on offense. And they're capable of scoring 60 plus like that. But does he have the durability to stay on the field for the remainder of the season and into the playoffs to make a playoff run? That has yet to be decided. So Vegas is a very talented team, and they are arguably the best team in the IFL with Jerome Johnson out there. But can he stay out there? Then the last game of the week, we've got the Duke City Gladiators at the Tucson Sugar Skulls, and Duke City won this game 21-20. You heard that score right, 21-20. This was an ugly one. Probably one of the ugliest games of the year, of the past few years. And that's saying something because we watched Tulsa, Massachusetts last week, and that was a very, very ugly one. But this one was much uglier. Duke City got their first win of the year in Tucson, so big shout out to Duke City for finally getting on the old W column. But this game was really a tale of two halves. In the first half, Tucson was up 20-0 at halftime. So Duke City got shut out in the first half, but you flip that in the second half, Duke City went on a 21-0 run in the second half. Tucson was shut out in the second half. So one team was shut out in the first half, the other was shut out in the second half. And defensively, the teams played pretty well, but the offenses were just miserable. Duke City's offense was just so bad in the first half, bad turnovers. Tucson's offense in the second half, they were able to move the ball a little bit, but they could not finish drives. They were missing field goals, bad interceptions from both teams. This was just an ugly, ugly game. And both of these teams are just not good, which is a shame because Duke City has a lot of talented pieces, and I thought Tucson was going to be a lot better than they actually are. But we're sitting at this point of the season, they're sitting at 2-7. Duke City's sitting at 1-8. Both these teams are not very good, and especially with them being in the West, both their seasons are just about done at this point. So Duke City was without Joe Mancuso, their quarterback in this one, and turns out he asked for his release earlier in the week due to some behind the scenes stuff, do some culture things that just wasn't aligning with what he wanted to do or participate in. So they had very few bright spots on offense, but wide receiver Journey Sloan and running back Jeff Carr seemed to get the bulk of the touches in the passing game. And luckily for Duke City, the defense really stepped up in the second half. Tucson took an interesting approach to the game offensively, but they just got sunk by bad turnovers in the beginning and the end of the game. Their approach to this game was they had some wide receivers that were hurt and they were really thin at the wide receiver spot. So they have running back Mike Jones and they have running back Devontae Sapp Lynch. So they were playing with both running backs in the game at the same time. One of them would be lined up at receiver. Both of them would go in motion at times. So it was an interesting approach. It kind of was a built-in triple option, but they just weren't able to execute as well as they needed to. Devontae Sapp Lynch looked great with the ball in his hands, but they just weren't able to finish drives consistently. The first play of the game, Malik Mitchell threw a bad interception. Last play of the game for Tucson, Malik Mitchell threw another bad interception that was a miscommunication with his receiver. Basically, he thought the receiver was going to keep running left. The receiver stopped. Malik threw it as if the receiver was going to keep running left, straight to the DB. That was with about 10 seconds left. The game was over. So I personally had high hopes for Tucson this season. I thought they were going to be a very, very good team, especially after their first couple of weeks, but injuries have not been kind to them, and they just have not been able to piece it together in a very, very powerful Western Conference. So honestly, watching this game, neither team really deserved to win this game on offense, but fortunately for Duke City, somebody had to win this game, and unfortunately for Tucson, they ended up losing. So that was IFL Week 12. Had some really good games, had some very, very bad games, very rough watches for some folks. But let's take a look at the playoff picture as it stands now in the West and the East. Starting in the East, the top four spots are currently occupied by Frisco and Green Bay at 8-2 in the first two spots, and then Massachusetts at 6-4 in the third spot, and then Quad City at 4-5 in the fourth spot. So the fourth spot is still very much up for grabs amongst the teams that are in the East. Would not be surprised to see Iowa continue to surge. Tulsa has just been on a downward spiral, so I'm not sure if they are going to be able to contend and really make a push for that fourth spot. But Quad City's not doing themselves any favors, and that spot is ultimately up for grabs. But Frisco, Green Bay, and Massachusetts have been the three best teams in the East so far this year, and they should be able to cruise into the playoffs, barring any outlier situations that may arise. And then in the West is where it gets a little more complicated because we've got Bay Area at 8-1 at the top, Vegas at 7-2 at the second spot, Northern Arizona at 7-3 in the third spot, And then San Diego in the 4th spot at 6-4. Arizona is also 6-4, but San Diego has a slightly better win percentage in terms of conference games. So that's why they get the tiebreaker in that 4th spot. So 6-4 is good enough for the 3rd spot in the East, but right now you're on the outside looking in on the West if you're 6-4. So I could see San Antonio potentially making a push for the 4th spot, but they're going to need a lot of help. They're going to have to basically win at least 5 of their last 7 games here and get a little help from some other teams to lose some games in front of them. But it feels like the top 3 spots in this conference are also pretty much locked in. But the way these teams have played so far this season, I would not be surprised to see this top 4 get jumbled as the season progresses. So this is going to be a very fun playoff race to watch and keep an eye on. And Arizona has been getting better and better each week. San Diego, they haven't been able to win the big game against a big team other than Northern Arizona a few weeks back. Northern Arizona is surging. Bay Area is getting better week after week. Vegas, can they stay durable? So there's lots of storylines to keep track of and lots of exciting things to monitor. So let's dive into IFL Week 13, give a little preview of some of those games, and I'll do my best to try to guess what the spreads on those games are going to be in the total. So first game is going to be on Saturday at 12:05 Central, Green Bay at Massachusetts. Green Bay has to be the favorite in this one. I would imagine they're going to come in as probably 7.5, 6.5 point favorites because Massachusetts really turned it on last week against Frisco. So I think that's going to help them out here. And I can see this total. Both defenses are 2 of the top defenses in the entire league. So this total is probably going to be pretty low, probably looking at like an 84.5, 83.5. But then again, both offenses, specifically Green Bay, has been absolutely rolling the past couple of weeks. Massachusetts kind of woke up. So this could be an interesting total to hop on, depending on what the final number is. Next up, we've got Tulsa at Jacksonville at 6:05 Central. This is going to be a bad one. This is going to be a very bad one, folks. Jacksonville's only win of the season came against Tulsa earlier this year, and that kind of started the downward spiral for Tulsa. Tulsa has just been abysmal on offense. So this might be a very low total. We might see a total back in the 70s with this one, maybe like a 79.5, 78.5. Jacksonville has a pretty good defense. Tulsa has a pretty good defense. Tulsa's offense has been very bad, and Jacksonville's offense is young and inexperienced. So I would imagine that Tulsa would be the favorite just because they have a couple more wins on the year at this point. But both teams are down bad, so I would imagine Tulsa maybe being a 2.5, 3 point favorite. But it's this is going to be a tough watch. This is going to be a tough one. Then kicking off at the same time on Saturday is going to be Duke City at San Antonio. San Antonio coming off of a bye week last week, which they needed after Sam Casanova got a little roughed up against Bay Area a few weeks back. San Antonio is for sure going to be the favorite in this one, probably looking at a 12.5, 13.5 point spread. Total wise, San Antonio totals are always high, so we're probably looking at something 92.5, 93.5, but San Antonio will do their part. Can Duke City do their part with the current offensive structure that they have? I don't know. I don't think they can, but yeah, San Antonio should control this game very, very handily. Also kicking off at 6:05 on Saturday is going to be the Frisco Fighters at the Quad City Steamwheelers. Frisco is 100% going to be the favorite heading into this one, especially off of the game they had last week against Massachusetts. Probably looking at a -12, -13 line, somewhere in that range. Despite being the road team, Frisco has had a lot of double-digit spreads in their favor over the past couple of, not just the past couple of weeks, but all season long. So would not be surprised to see that happen again, especially with Quad City having those question marks at the quarterback position right now. Total wise, probably looking at something low 90s, 91.5, 92.5. Frisco's defense is pretty good and can take advantage of the inabilities of Quad City at this time, but TJ Edwards kind of had his tune-up game last week, getting back into the rhythm of things, coming back from injury. So he should be able to have a pretty good game against Quad City. And then kicking off at 7:05 Central is going to be the Vegas Nighthawks at the Sioux Falls Storm. I believe it's probably going to be the first time that these teams have played each other in the regular season. Vegas is for sure going to be the favorite. Vegas coming in at 7-2. Sioux Falls coming in at 2-7. Probably looking at a minus minus 12, minus 11, somewhere in that range. I think it's going to be very dependent on if Jerome Johnson is healthy enough to play this game. George Reyna is a more than worthy backup to fill in if needed, as he showed last week. But Vegas is going to have to get this is going to have to be their get right game, because if they lose to Sioux Falls, we're going to have a lot of questions about Vegas next week. And Sioux Falls has some sneaky veteran experience. So it's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's all going to depend on what that spread total looks like. And this could be a decent spot to take Sioux Falls. I might be talking myself into it, but total wise, probably looking at something in the mid 90s, probably like a 95.5, just because Vegas is a high powered offense. Sioux Falls can be a high powered offense if the passing game is clicking, but this should be a more entertaining game than you would think. Then starting at 8:05 Central is going to be Arizona at San Diego. So both teams currently sitting at 6-4. Both teams fighting for that fourth playoff spot right now. So we will have somebody in sole possession of that fourth playoff spot here soon after this game. But I would anticipate San Diego being the favorite, being that they are the home team and they controlled the game against Tulsa pretty well. Arizona had a little bit of trouble against Jacksonville early, but made the adjustments necessary. So I would imagine San Diego is probably going to be like a 4.5, 5.5 point favorite. This total is probably going to be very, very high. This one might be one of the few that's in the hundreds, might be like a total of 101, 99.5, somewhere in that range. So this one's going to be a very high scoring game. San Diego's production quality is top notch, so it's going to be a fun game to watch. Their announcer team is a very good listen as well. So this is probably going to be one of the best games of the entire weekend. Then last but not least, also kicking off at 8:05 is going to be the Tucson Sugar Skulls at the Bay Area Panthers, and Bay Area is probably going to pound Tucson here. Bay Area's This might be the largest spread we see all season. I think the largest one we've seen is maybe 16.5. This might meet it or exceed it. Bay Area is just so good at every level on defense. Offensively, they're just a ground and pound team that has really found their identity. Tucson just makes so many mistakes on offense, and defensively, they managed to keep themselves in it a little bit. But coming off of a loss to Duke City last week, Bay Area coming off of a bye week, Bay Area is going to be favored big in this one. Total's probably going to be in the high 80s, maybe low 90s, probably like a 89.5, somewhere in that range. But Bay Area should handle Tucson without a doubt, and this might be one of the biggest blowouts of the season. That's IFL Week 13. Should have some really good games all throughout the weekend. Some of the games that don't look so good on paper may surprise us in the end. Maybe some of the teams will make some of the adjustments that they need to be competitive. We've had lots of one-score games over the past couple of weeks, so hopefully some of these games that look a little more lopsided on paper will surprise us. Up next, we've got LJ McConnell of the Frisco Fighters. He took some time to talk through his football journey, this year's Frisco team, and what he's got going on with his podcast that he has. So without further ado, here's LJ. All right, joining us on the show today, we've got defensive back, wide receiver, kick returner, athlete for the Frisco Fighters of the IFL. He's also an entrepreneur, a financial advisor, and a podcast host off the field. I'm sure he has much more to his name than that. You name it, he could probably do it. But we've got LJ McConnell. LJ, how are things?
Hey man, things are going great, man. I appreciate you having me on here. It's really a blessing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So first things first, tell us about your football journey and tell us about how you kind of found your way into the IFL and how you got involved.
Okay, so I can talk a lot, you know what I'm saying? So I'm
I
trying to
got
sum this up the best way I can. So
Yeah.
originally from, a lot of people know this, but I'm from the 513 baby, Cincinnati, Ohio. Go Bengals,
Uh-huh.
But I went to Winton Woods High School and was there pretty much from third grade on to senior year or junior year of high school. At some point, I've always been focused. I've always had seen the bigger picture. I've always been like my dad always says. Like my dad always said, man, it's always been like a blessing on my life. Like I just always seen the bigger picture and knew where I wanted to go, and I was never gonna let anything stop me. So, as we get older, people go different ways. You have some friends that do this as you get older. You got some friends that stay on the straight path.
Right.
And and it's just life. So I broke off. Originally started playing quarterback, growing up. A lot of people don't know that. And I wish I would have stuck with that position. I love it. I love playing QB, man. And then it went into my high school one it was going to like, I was starting to play JV quarterback, had like 30 some touchdowns my JV year. Then, my freshman year went to my JV year. Then they started moving me up to varsity to try to play receiver. They needed somebody, and I'm young, you know what I'm saying? But I'm doing big things against some of these dudes in the NFL, such as Mike Edwards, who's got like 3 Super Bowl rings. He's a safety, went to UK. That was my teammate. Was one of the crazy things against him as a young dude. And David Long, the linebacker for the Miami Dolphins right now, who played with the Tennessee Titans. You know what I'm saying? So I've always been around dope, top elite prospects. You know what I'm saying? And me being young, they seen that in me and they moved me up to switch positions. Then receiver took off. But to make a long story short, people went different ways. My aunt had built a house down here in Allen, Texas, where Kyler Murray was. And I got the opportunity to come in this school, man. I ended up leaving Winton Woods, Cincinnati, left within a week. Boom. Went back home, Dad. It's hard to pass up this high school here, too. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard. And so did that within a week, came here, stepped out on faith, and my life took off, man. From there, I went to Liberty University in Virginia for about 3 years. Then I went to Albany Christian for about 2 years. Then I did my COVID year at Colorado Mesa, finished following a coach, and was there for about a couple months. But, through the process of, against the IFL, I was just more as such as like, my years didn't go as they wanted, but they were still better than some of the guys in the Big Ten and things of that sort. You know what I'm saying? But I knew politics existed. But as far as going to come into the IFL, man, I used to tell myself, if I have the chance, I wasn't going to play in the league. You know what I'm saying? If I'll be honest, I didn't know too much about it, never heard about it. I don't know if we even had a team in Cincinnati, Ohio, other than the Bengals football-wise. But I didn't want to live in that realm of what if I didn't play.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then my first year last year, that's when they connected with the XFL. Now I'm seeing it could be a possibility of like the G League for the NBA of getting moved up. And I said, you know what? Why not take the opportunity? Why not make connections for a lifetime that can help you with jobs and things of that sort, even off the field? So and that's how I ended up here, man. I ended up here and this has been a crazy great year so far. Crazy great year so far. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. So what was your first exposure to indoor arena football? Like, did you know about it as a kid, or was it something where it's like after college you were looking around and be like, oh, what's this?
So, I feel like tech is like the mecca of sports, or at least football wise. And to be honest with you, I think it was after going through the draft process and not hearing your name get called, I'm thinking like, okay, what's next? What can I do now other than finding a career that I love and something that I have a passion for? It was more such as what other leagues are out there. I know I got the CFL. How do I do that? Okay, go to camps, things like that, run 40s, crap like that. Okay, there's another Mexican league they got coming up. They got leagues everywhere, man.
Right, yeah.
And so I heard of IFL because I think, I'm not gonna lie, dog, there was a lot of people that's big-time people that played in it. For my team specifically, the Frisco Fighters, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got guys like, it was a guy, I forget his name. He was a big time prospect. RIP, passed away. He was a big time prospect out of Florida. Ended up passing away and things like that. But we had a lot of guys played there. Cavante Turpin, playing here, things like that. So I heard about it that way. But then to be honest with you, it was that day. I was at the gym working out downtown Dallas, and I got a call from like Quad Cities coach. And I was like, damn, okay. I'm thinking about it. You know what I'm saying? It's different living home, going to the middle of nowhere. I don't know where Quad Cities is. We played them this week, and I don't have no clue where
right.
So I was like, I'm going to think about it. Then I got a team overseas, like Germany somewhere calling me just to come play QB for a couple games for a couple $100. I was like, okay, that didn't make sense. Right. Then I got a call from Coach Billy Back, who gave me the opportunity to stay here, play for the team, and have the opportunity to, at least. And that's how I got exposed to it, through him.
That's
for the most
great.
part. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you didn't even have to leave. You didn't have to go anywhere. You just stayed
I didn't have to leave, man. It's hard to leave a place like this. As you travel around, I love traveling. You see Dallas and you live here, you see all the connections, the money that's flowing, the people, right. the nightlife, the things that they're building, the properties, the real estate. And I'm just like, I go somewhere else and it's like, we really are the perfect, like, this is a perfect city for anybody, I feel like. Only thing we're missing, man, is a beach. If Dallas had a beach, like if Galveston was a little bit closer, it'd be the perfect spot, to be honest. It'd be the perfect spot.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so what were some of the biggest challenges transitioning from the outdoor game to the indoor game? for you in particular?
So, man, that's a great question because I was that cat that had a hard time transitioning. To be honest with you, it almost felt like I felt when going from high school here in Allen to knowing everything fast, to going to college at Liberty and everything's fast, offense signals, things I could not get it. It was just took me a little bit longer to get.
Yeah.
So the thing that's different is, there is stationary parts of the game, but the waggle is different. You know what I'm saying? How to use the waggle to you be deceptive to the DBs and the defense to get them to open up one way, to go the other way, to get him to scooch in one way, to maybe want to out route or start outside to get back inside to win over top. You know what I'm saying? There's many different things to do. Playing an offense like ours, not to give too much away, but we have like an option offense. Literally, a defense cannot be right in our offense, against our offense, because whatever you do, I can do the opposite and still be correct.
Right. Yeah.
So if you're too far back, I'm gonna sit it. If you're too far close, I'm gonna take it. If you inside, I'm going out. If you outside, I'm going inside.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't stop it. And with having like a MVP type, NFL mindset type quarterback like TJ Edwards, it makes everything easier. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He is the best quarterback I've ever played with in my whole entire life. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it makes it a lot easier. And what's hard is having a QB like that you never had like that, that's so focused and determined, and it's like a coach on the field. And he has a certain level he plays at. So if you don't play at that top level, if you don't raise your level, wherever that may be, he's on your ass for the most part. You know what I'm saying?
That's good. Yeah.
It is good. A lot of people fold under that pressure and things of that sort. But as far as that, it's the high motion that was different. It's okay, I'm having an option to do anything I want in any position in the offense, even running backs. That it was like almost having too much freedom. Like I never had this much freedom before. Like
Right.
But it can be tricky because if you're not on the same page with them, then you should have done that, but he expects you to do this, and then it could turn out pretty bad. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Yeah. You get that much more freedom, but it's end of the day, it's a smaller field. So that freedom, you got to make those decisions quick on what those things are going to be. Because it's not
And
like you can just race them 50 yards down the field. It's like you're 50 yards down the field, you're in the stands.
Exactly. Like you smacking the wall going over top of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Then I will say the rules. I ain't gonna lie to you, bro. I still don't know all the rules. I learned a different rule. I got called for a flag this week because the guy, T.O., whoever it was, motioned inside of the receiver and I didn't move with him. I learn new rules every game, dude. So it's kind of like, yes, the rules are different, a little bit different, but I'm blessed to be playing this game. I love it, and how blessed you are because on the outside looking in, and perspective is everything to me. It's people when we have these tryouts for different, like for our team, it's maybe if not 100, but like 50 people trying for that same position that you want.
Right.
That you maybe didn't have to work so hard for just because who you are and what you can do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it is a blessing to be able to play this game. Because a lot of things come out of it. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So you in particular, you recently had a position change. You went from offense to defense from last season into this season. So not only were you adjusting to the indoor game, but now you're adjusting to a whole different side of the ball. So
exactly.
like how did that change come about, and how has the adjustment process for you been with that? Because obviously it's working. You got 6 interceptions on the year. We're barely over halfway through the season. Like, how's that been?
Okay, so I should have 7. So that pick against San Antonio, and I took it back to the crib when it was like a muff kickoff. I mean, a field goal. He muffed it, ran around, threw it to me. I don't know why that doesn't count as 7, but I wish it did.
Right. Yeah.
I hate being tied against all the other guys in the league. But so it happened around this. So my year didn't go as well. I had a head coach, that didn't believe in me for the most part. I mean, the thing is, it's new to everybody else, but the people that know me and been around me my whole life, I've been doing this since I was a kid. Yeah. Like this has been nothing. Like playing, no matter if it's QB, kick return, punt return, like I've done this my whole life, and I've done it at Allen. You know what I'm saying? One of the biggest high schools in the country. So, he just didn't believe in me. You know what I'm saying? There's something you different when you have a coach that believes in you. You know what I'm saying? That wants to see you succeed. That says, hey, it's on you, make a play. I love that. I want that. You know what I'm saying? I can carry that on my back and proud and happy to do it. And always follow through with it for the most part. But it happened because of that situation, me not playing that much last year because of those incidents or whatever it was. Some of our DBs were banged up. And, with indoor, people don't know this, but you have to show your worth on the team, right? So if you just stick with one, you have to be that guy at one position to just play that one position, right?
Yeah, right.
Lesser people, smaller field. If you want to make a team, a lot of these teams, you need to be able to play kick returner and kick returner and offense, or kick returner and defense, just to make the roster and travel all week to week. Because if you don't travel,
Right.
you're not really getting paid the amount of money you think you're going to get paid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, at that time, I'm getting a little bit of reps, things like that. I'm struggling with, like, do I play? Do I stop playing? I'm down on myself because he don't believe in me. He not giving me opportunity to do anything.
Right.
So one of our DBs got hurt, or he was battling with, like, knee injuries. And the fun guy, I'm in practice lit, like, dancing because we play music in practice. And I'm like, I'll try it out. Literally went out there and did one-on-ones with some of our top receivers that's not here no more. They're in the CFL now, and held my own. Literally,
Okay.
I'm talking about jammed them, like, held my own, man. And from that, boom, confidence was there. And everybody was like, damn, LJ, you should play DB. I'm like, I don't know if that's a compliment or that's disrespectful, bro.
Right. Yeah.
Life, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I did that, and coaches from there on out was like, you're a DB. And what's funny is I go back to Liberty, my coaches tried to get me to switch. They see my feet, they seen how my body structure.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost makes you think, like, damn, what if I did do that? Like, would life be a little bit different,
Right. Yeah.
But they did it, and Coach Dre, all shout out to him. But once it's for him, I either still be retired right now, doing what I'm doing now, helping people invest in things like that, or still playing receiver. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so he seen it in me. He said, literally, like, I see you as a DB, and I want you to go to DB, like, literally. And with him having that confidence in me, him and Coach Snoop, who's our DB coach and co-defensive coordinator, they seen that in me, and now, like, I mean, look what happens. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you see that with Trayvon Diggs, you see that with so many other people. That's Richard Sherman. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
I'm just saying I'm blessed that God is, like, really showing himself, like, through me this season, for sure. Because, I mean, I don't know if it's been done much, but, like, having almost a streak of picks and still doing decently. I mean, I don't know how many touchdowns been given up between the DBs in the league, but I'm sure I have the least amount. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So.
Yeah.
It's going pretty good. So I'm handling it well now. Now my confidence is out the roof. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Yeah.
Because of how I'm kind of holding my own in a way, and I got great teammates like Charles on the D line and Solo on the D line, and my linebackers. Them creating that pressure helps the QB get the ball out faster than he anticipates,
Right.
and it's coming right to me. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it isn't just all my doing. I got them being great too. That's helping me get those turnovers. So yeah.
Pressure bursts pipes, right?
It sure does.
That pressure will get there.
Yep, 100%, man, 100%.
So a couple weeks back, you guys played San Diego.
Yeah.
You're down 4, 16 seconds left. They kick it off straight to you. You house it for a touchdown and for the win. I made a reel about the whole situation, and you commented. I replied back. I said, as soon as I saw you catch it, I said, "Oh no," out loud, because I knew what was about to happen. Walk us through that moment. Walk us through that play and how it all developed and how it all went down.
Okay, so we wasn't really having the best game. You know what I'm saying? We would want to, and we anticipate, and we like to start off fast. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Come out the gates up 21-0, whatever it may be, right?
Right.
And so the game was. I mean, they're a good team. They're a good team. Got a great quarterback, right? Nate Diaz, a great like long-time quarterback in the IFL, I believe so. And it was a hard fought game. So I think my teammate Elijah Lilly, who I played at Colorado with, that was my boy who returned it before I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, always, coach, do not kick it to him. Do not kick it to Lilly. He's one of the fastest people I've played with in my life, who I've seen in person. I mean, the dude is fast, and as y'all seeing now. And I'm just like, okay, we're down. Like, what in the hell? Like, somebody got to make a play. Like, somebody has to make a play. And I'm buckling up my chin strap. Like, okay, like, do it. And so my initial thinking when I'm walking back from the huddle to go out to the field, I hear Coach Dre like, make a play, let's go, return, let's go. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. I'm talking to myself as I'm walking back. And I'm like, okay, he might just kick it out or something like that. But if he kicks it to me, let's at least get ourselves a chance and get to midfield.
Mm-hmm.
If I do that, then I know that one of my teammates on the offense side of the ball can do something great. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even if I have to return it and then go straight to offense also, I would have done that if I had to. But if I'm being strictly like purely honest with you, bro, like when that ball got into my hand, my mind shuts off. Boom. I let my body take over. I can't, and I said this on Twitter a couple like yesterday. When things like that happen, like Saturday, I hurt a little guy, right? I don't like. I guess I dig deep in my bag to do that, but that return, I caught it. Boom, my mind went blank,
Yeah.
and then my mind did not turn back on until I dove into the end zone. And then I got up and I went back down, just like thanking God, because like we almost like basically sealed the game off. But
yeah, right.
If I'm being honest with you, bro, I have no idea. I just got it and just started running. Literally, it was like a flash. You know what I'm saying? Right. And but I'm happy I helped to do that, man. Because last year, this time of year, I was at a dark spot in my life, trying to figure things out, not playing ball, but playing, but not only actually on the field, contributing to the success of the team. You know what I'm saying? Like it's crazy when they say 6 months can change your life. 6 months have changed your life for sure for me. But
that's great.
It was a great moment though, laying on the ground, seeing all my teammates around, and just being able to help bring success and get us, another dub in this league for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So you as you mentioned earlier, and as you talked about on your podcast Unphazed, talked about living in the Dallas Frisco area. You're saying it was one of the best things you've ever done. Tell us a little bit about that and what made it that way for you. What's been so great about living in Dallas?
So growing up in Cincinnati, like I said, you only got people that, to be honest with you, cut hair, they're dead or in jail. Just doing the same things that they did years ago. You know what I'm saying? I'm always about evolving, improving my life. I have my wallpaper on my phone is a caption. It's called, or it says evolve or repeat. And I do not want to live my life repeating the same things over and over and over again. I want to consistently get better at what it is I'm doing, and even myself, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So what I didn't tell you is before I moved here, I went to church that Saturday or that Sunday after I went to TCU camp. So what happened was my dad and my mom was like, okay, can't afford to go to all these different camps because like they know all my passion was football. Yeah. And I'm getting mail from Purdue, like TCU. I'm getting mail from Ohio State, all these Michigan State, all these Big Ten schools because I'm up there in that area. And it was like, okay, well, what school you want to go to? I'm like, okay, well, Aunt Jackie lives in Allen, Texas. Okay, that's TCU. And that was when they had Trayvon Boykin, I believe, and Dotson, the receiver. So they were hot. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I want to go to that TCU football camp, which is beautiful campus. Loved it. That next day, I went to church. Our pastor at one community church, and I still go out here in Allen and Plano, Texas, talked about stepping out on faith and like leaving, and trying to improve your life. After that sermon, I texted Coach Westerberg. And I probably never told people this publicly, but I texted him. So people be like, oh, they recruit. No, he didn't recruit me. I just took a step out on faith. How you doing? I'm like, I'm McConnell. This is my huddle. I run this 40. These are my highlights. I would love to connect. I swear, I think we at church, we went to the Pancake House in Uptown Dallas, and like within 20 minutes before we left, he DM'd me back. How you doing? I'd love you to come in. I'll show you the facilities, which are top notch. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm getting a little walkthrough right before I leave to go back to Cincinnati. And trying to figure out, okay, what I got to do to get here. And this was a year after Kyler left, but I didn't play with Kyler, but Kyler and his dad, Kevin, helped me get here in a way when I did move here. They helped me, like, kind of molded me, okay, this and that, do this. And I caught with them a lot, worked out with them a good amount of times growing up in high school. But just by even just saying that, like, once I moved here, and this is true, I believe a life hack that anybody should do, if you want different, want something better, and you've been in your same city for 50, 20, 10 years, leave. Go experience something new. Yeah. Right? Try to become a new person and build new connections because that's what I did, and it worked out for me, man. I met so many people, like, I meet so many different athletes, so many business people. I meet people that's cool with Mark Cuban. I got people on my side I can call right now if I need some advice about real estate, whatever, that got over 50 million in assets and got plenty of properties and things that I've been on Shark Tank that has poured into my life, man. But like, I try to get out and connect and meet so many people. But since I've been at Allen, man, since then to now, my life has changed 100%. My mind has changed 100%. I'm no longer the person that I used to be back in college. You know what I'm saying? So, and people always ask me, why you got Dallas for you? You're not from here. Why don't got a 513 tattoo? I'm like, well, bro, like Dallas has been, if not the best decision I've made, top 2 decisions I made in my lifetime, my short life. I've been 27. So, man, it's the connections, it's the people, it's the weather's great. It's everything. Like I always say, this is my home. Like once I have a wife and kids, I want to be here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So after I'm done playing, I wouldn't mind moving somewhere for a little bit. But at the end of the day, this is gonna be my hub for sure because it got everything you need here. I love
Yeah.
Dallas.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. My wife and I are from Central Florida area,
Okay.
and we live up in Tennessee now. We moved around Florida for a little bit over the past 7 8 years or so, and I could not agree more regarding like you gotta get away from where you grew up if you really wanna grow as a person, grow as like kind of put yourself in an environment where like, all right, I'm starting fresh. This is the opportunity for me to build up who I want to be as a person. Whereas if you stay home, you're kind of stuck, might sound bad, but you're kind of stuck with who you
You
are at
are.
that time, right?
And you
So
being
it kind of gives
comfortable.
you,
You know what I'm
yes,
saying?
exactly. Yeah.
You've been comfortable. Like you grow and being in stages of uncomfortability. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and that was very uncomfortable. Being a new kid coming to a school this big, it's like, and this is like that school you see at Island, like the school you see on like shows growing up on Nickelodeon, like Zoe 101 and High School Musical. There's cliques.
Uh-huh.
Okay, if you're that guy, you're gonna know everybody. If you're not, then you might have your posse, but it's
Right.
literally like that, bro. So like, and I've never been that guy that's hung with the jocks. I've always hung with everybody. You know what I'm saying? I don't care if it's
Yeah.
the guy in the class that's the nerd or whatever. I do a lot. Like as you can tell, like probably now, like I do a lot of it. I'm not just a football player. I do a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah. If the vibes are right, doesn't matter who you are, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, but my thing is, I'm not going. I only hang with like-minded people, though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I've always been that way. So yeah.
So I'm gonna give you a quote that somebody blogged early in the season, approximately week two. It
Mhm.
says, "This fighters team took the field on Friday night. They're not the same Frisco team that we used to seeing. They were
Mhm.
stale and stagnant in the first half. Could Frisco pick up where they left off? They have a lot of the same ingredients, but can they make it work with the new coach calling the shots? I don't know. Hypothetically, if you could say something to that person, what would you say?"
Um, just sit back and watch. Just sit back and watch. I mean,
Hand up. That was me. That was me early on in the season. That was me.
oh, okay, okay, okay.
I had some doubts early on with the coaching change and some of the other changes that happened with the team, but you guys have been absolutely rolling. You got off to a low rocky start, but ever since then, you guys been absolutely rolling. And I've been like, look, yeah, they're the same team. They still got the same nucleus. They still got it.
Exactly. So like, I mean, anytime you got people coming in from different, anytime. Okay, listen. Like last year, we had dogs everywhere. I'm talking
Right.
about, and we were blowing out people left and right. And if it wasn't for that trick play last year, we probably would have been in Vegas for sure, getting
Yeah.
against the Bay Area Panthers. But we had dogs, and I knew that. I knew that in training camp that we wasn't gonna be the same team.
Right.
But it was about having some of the key, and Coach Cole knew that he could have some of the key pieces that were there last year and just add bits and pieces here and there, then we
Hmm.
can still have the same formula. And I think that's what we did, you know what I'm saying, with me and then having Phazione, my business partner, my brother, to
Yeah.
having like the best QB in the league, to my opinion, TJ Edwards, to having Meatball, who's the best running back in the league for sure, who should be in the NFL 100%.
Right.
Um, having Charles on the defensive line, having additions like Solo, and then like, having a great coaching staff and having that same culture. I knew that, okay, we might not blow people out left and right. We still can, but we
Hmm.
might not as much, but we will get the job done. So,
Yeah.
and I think we showed bits and pieces of like the team that we can be. I don't even think we hit that ceiling yet, that peak yet,
Hmm.
and they were still winning. Just imagine what we're gonna do when we place it all together, and we're close.
Oh
We're
yeah.
close together for sure.
Oh yeah, that's the scary thing. Is like if you watch the games, you're like, all right, that was about 70%.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
they have not been nearly on getting a full throttle of Frisco just yet. So yeah, you guys
Exactly.
are definitely continuing to build and stack in the right direction. But speaking of your podcast, Unphased, it's a modetainment, a little motivational entertainment. Love that description. With your teammate Phazione McClurge. Tell
Right.
us tell us about the podcast and how that came to be and how that's going.
Well, so me and Fez, as I'm working to be like a financial advisor, he's does the whole life insurance things and things like that, and the whole
Hmm.
financial literacy. We both do that. It was just like me and Fez met in 2021 during the NFL draft at MJP out here in Dallas, like in McKinney, matter of fact.
Hmm.
And we hung out a little bit, things like that. And then we ended up playing together, which is crazy for 2 years. So I felt like God had a bigger purpose in our life, more than football.
Yeah.
And we're literally the split image of each other. The things we want, our motivations, or our motives, I should say, and like who we are as people. And it's like we're brothers. So we argue like brothers. We go back at each other, fight, things like that. It's so fun. But
Yeah.
he's big on financial literacy and teaching, and wanted to teach people on how to use their money, how to use their resources, how to use their assets, and continue to build assets, and not just be stuck on liabilities and things of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the podcast space is a big space right now, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And I love watching them, $1 million worth of game. He loves watching Joe Rogan. I'll be watching so many EYL network and things like that. And I just love helping people and giving back, you know what I'm saying? And to me, the system of how the schools teach us like English, writing, things like that, but they never teach how to pay taxes, you know, how to pay a mortgage, or how to invest your money. What's an annuity? What's a 401k? What's a Roth? What's a Roth? What's a, like, you know what I'm saying? Traditional. What's a, like, a Roth IRA? Like, it's so many different things I can keep. What's life insurance? Okay. Is there a term and it's permanent? Okay. Is there cash value in a whole life? Yes. Is there, like, it's so many different things that, you know, that we know now. And I feel like I found what's a stock? What's a bond? You know what I'm saying? I found my passion in, and it's almost like I'm a superhero because I know information that a lot of people don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? No matter if you're black, white, purple, green, it doesn't matter. Like, a lot of people don't know this stuff, and I feel like it's my due diligence to help them out, especially athletes, man. Same thing for him. Like, why not have an FA or somebody that knows the stuff that you don't know, but that been through the burner and the ringer with you, that have been through all the camps, that have been through all the women trying to get in your life, things like that, or the people that's trying to take your money and the injuries, like whatever it may have been, the flying out clubs and things of that sort, that's been there, that can help you, because he changed his life, and make sure you don't go through those same things. And that's my main message I want to give to all the athletes out there. I don't care. Now they got NIL deals, people making millions of dollars. Well, in college, I had hundreds of thousands of dollars, at least 100,000 at least.
Right.
At least at 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. Left college, ain't have anything. Why? Because I was living that fake lifestyle, one about a Louis Vuitton, the Coach bags, straight liabilities. But then if you know what I know now, by reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and Magic of Thinking Big and Under Millionaire Next Door, if I would have spent some of that money and put 500 into NVIDIA or something like that when it came out, I'd be up $10 million right now.
Right. Yeah, you'd be looking good.
Bitcoin. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the power of, or even put it into like a Roth IRA, like, I'd be good. And my thing is, I want to help set people up for life. You know what I'm saying? Because, and this isn't easy stuff to learn too, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like the government makes it that way so, you know, they can keep taxing you and getting them, basically making you work for him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it happened that way because we love helping people, man. And podcasting is a big space right now. We have 2 different funny personalities, and it's going pretty good. We've got like a guy on there, like Eli Mack. He's a big YouTuber who's on our team, and got him on there. And we're just gonna keep going and keep going and keep going and try to get sponsorships and things like that. But hey, you never know unless you start. Like you said, you never know unless you shoot your shot in the axe or start.
Right.
And I mean, hey, we started out with like my phone and his phone with our tripods up at the top of my apartment downtown, and started from there. But now we got a whole little production team that does our video, our editing, and things like that. So it's going pretty good, man. We just started. Yes, sir.
That's awesome. Yeah, I watched the first couple episodes, and it's a very fun watch. Like, I highly recommend checking it out. Long term, what's the vision for Unphazed?
Long term is to make it to where, you know, that's a great question. I would think long term is to get our message out to plenty of people, no matter if you're an athlete, non-athlete.
Right.
Help people, give people the motivation. I think the long-term deal is to get sponsorships, grow the brand. To be honest with you, is just to help people all over the country, no matter the age, the ethnicity. That if we could help teach people about finance and give them motivation and help out athletes, because it isn't easy being an athlete, man. Like, we deal with so much mental health and things like that. A lot of people, just because I found my passion outside of my sport right now, it's 35-year-olds thinking they can still play the ball. Like, bro, you have to move on from that. Like, life is going to end. I mean, life is going to start at some point, and football is going to end at some point. So you have to find that thing, that niche that you have a passion for. So if we can help change people's lives, and maybe even get paid or something like that to do so, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Yeah, I love seeing it get started. I'm happy to get in on the ground floor there with it. So I'm subscribed. Definitely
Appreciate that.
suggest everyone hop in there. Where can people find it on YouTube and on socials?
So we're all everywhere: Spotify, Instagram, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, TikTok at Unphazed Pod.
Okay.
Literally, UNPHAZED POD. If you see a handsome dark skinned fellow like me and an ugly light skinned fellow like him, you know that's the right thing. That's the right thing you're on.
All right,
Yeah.
sounds good. Yeah, and if you're watching this on the Off the Wall YouTube, I'm gonna link their channel in the comments, and then if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, it'll be in the description as well. And where can people follow along with you individually?
So you can follow along with me. My Instagram is LJ2Live with 3 underscores. My Twitter is LJ2Live with 3 underscores also. Um, I have a lot of my things when I do like financial talks with people, consultations and things like that. If you find me in that link in one of my bios on Twitter and Instagram, you can see things for like my Airbnbs. If you want to learn about financial literacy or learn about if you need life
Nice.
insurance or retirement or investments, things like that sort, you can go ahead and get like a 30-minute call with me and things like that. And my YouTube channel is called The Profitable Playmakers outside of the Unphased. And I chose that name because like you want to be profitable as a businessman or as an entrepreneur,
Yeah,
but then also on the sports side, I feel like I'm a playmaker also. So that's why I went with that.
for sure.
And
Yeah, that's a great name.
yeah, appreciate that, man. And yeah, so that you can find that. Yeah, give me a follow, DM me, whatever. I'm a likable person. I'll reach out to everybody. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, and appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, best of luck the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll see a Frisco Fighters playoff run here. Right?
Oh, for sure. We 8-2. We need about 3 more wins plus. For
Yeah.
sure, 3 more to get us in the playoffs, lock us in at the number 1 seed, having the people come through us.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and for everybody that's listening, if you're in the Dallas area, you want to come to a game, just DM me. And if you're in the city, I'll make sure I get y'all tickets. So I don't mind showing love that way also.
Let's go. Love it. All right. Thank you again, LJ.
Yes, sir, man. You have a good one.
Big thanks to LJ for joining the show today and taking some time to talk about his football journey. Make sure you go follow him on Twitter and Instagram and all the socials. And make sure you follow and subscribe to their podcast, Unphased. It's a very, very fun watch. Go watch a couple episodes on YouTube or listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts after you're done with this episode, of course. Don't get too jumpy, but yeah, go check them out. They're a good time. In the last segment here, we're going to talk about AFL Week 6. So we had 3 different games take place this weekend, all pretty good games for what they were. Starting off with Albany at Nashville. Albany won this game 32-25, and this was a super low scoring game considering Albany has typically lit up the scoreboard. They've scored 60 plus a couple of times. They've scored 50 plus a handful of times. So to see them only score 32 was shocking. But this was a very ugly game for Albany. They started off the game with a kickoff return for a touchdown. So I was 90 seconds late tuning in, and I missed the touchdown to start the game. That's how quick it was. So they jumped out to a 7-0 lead, but that kind of makes the 32-point total a little bit more worrisome, meaning they got the 7 points in the first 30 seconds. They got 25 the rest of the 59 minutes and 30 seconds. So it was a little concerning, and this was just a very sloppy game for Albany, especially in the penalty department. They had 16 accepted penalties go against them for 128 yards. So that derailed a lot of momentum on offense. And while I was watching the game on the YouTube live stream, a lot of Albany fans were in the chat saying, "Oh, this is BS. Why are they throwing the flag?" You go back and watch some of those, they were worthy flags. Like it was blatant holdings, it was blatant, unsportsmanlike conducts where folks were getting a little too chatty and pursuing people that they shouldn't have been pursuing, and the penalties were worthwhile. And it's not surprising to see Albany commit a lot of penalties because they've committed a lot of penalties so far this year. So it's not like they're the least penalized team in the entire league and then suddenly they're the most penalized this week. That's been their Achilles heel is the amount of penalties that they've accrued as a team. So they are undefeated. They're 6-0 right now, but their penalties are to me are what is separating them from the other undefeated team that we'll talk about in just a little bit. But Darius Prince had a great game in this one. That's pretty much an evergreen statement. at this point. He had 10 catches for 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. So shocking to only see 2 touchdowns, but considering there were only 4 touchdowns scored by Albany in the entire game, him getting half of them, that checks out. That makes sense. So the kicker Orozco, he had 2 deuces as well. So he had one to start the second half that made me crack up. He kicked the deuce, and before it even landed, he turned his back, bent over, picked up the tee, and started jogging off the field because he just knew it was going to be a deuce and he knew what was about to happen. It was one of the cockiest things I've ever seen, but I loved it. It was awesome. But Albany, very, very sloppy game on offense for Albany. Quarterback Jake Medlock seems like he got banged up at some point in the game. First half of the game, he was a little bit more mobile and wasn't wearing a knee brace. Second half of the game, he was visibly limping throughout the game, and he had a knee brace on his knee. So that's something to monitor and to look at in the weeks ahead. But Albany did just enough to hold on to this victory. They had a sizable lead, but Nashville was able to chip away at it late. And Nashville's comeback attempt fell short, but Albany's got to do a little bit better than they did this week moving forward. And the best thing that they can do for themselves is clean up some of the penalties, especially on some of the things that are very avoidable, like holding. Holding happens every play, whether you like it or not. It's just a matter of how blatant it is that the ref has to call it. But some of the unsportsmanlike stuff where you got some of your best players arguing with refs and making some statements towards the opposing team's bench and the opposing team's fans that they maybe shouldn't be. Those types of things are very easily avoidable. Where towards the end of the first half, they had, I think it was like a 1st and goal or 1st and 10 from like the 10-yard line or something. They had 2 back-to-back unsportsmanlikes that pushed them back beyond midfield. So they went from being in a very good spot to potentially score points to suddenly it's 1st and 25, 1st and 30, and they're just not in a good spot. So a lot of their wounds are self-inflicted, and they can clean some of those things up. They're still undefeated. They're still a very talented team, one of the best teams in the entire league by far. But their own worst enemy right now is themselves. For Nashville, their quarterbacks were just banged up, and they played sloppy even before they were banged up. Ramon Atkins got the start. He wasn't able to really connect very well with he wasn't able to really get things going on offense, but he took a massive shot that ended up being a roughing the passer penalty, which ties back to what we just talked about with Albany and their penalties that knocked him out of the game. Dalton Oliver, who's the other quarterback, was already hurt, so he came in and did the best that he could. They jockeyed between the 2 quarterbacks, and they just couldn't get consistent quarterback play out of either of their quarterbacks. And it's frustrating to see how Nashville has used or not used Ramon Atkins. Ramon Atkins played in the IFL for the past couple of seasons, and over the course of 2 seasons, he had 36 rushing touchdowns. So he is a dual threat. He has the ability to hurt you on the ground, but Nashville has not utilized that ability that he has at all. They're trying to turn him into a pocket passer, turn him into something that he's not. And when you're looking at the roster that you have, you want to be able to mold your game plan and mold what you do as a team and mold what your strengths are to the personnel that you have. If you want a pocket passer, then put a pocket passer out there. But if you have somebody that has the ability to be a dual threat like Ramon Atkins, you got to utilize that. Like move the pocket around, use him on some design quarterback runs, a quarterback draw, a quarterback power. We've seen other teams do it with their teams, but Nashville just hasn't put forth the effort to do that with Ramon Atkins. And now he's hurt, so I don't think you necessarily want to do that at this point. So yeah, Nashville's it's a tough situation because their defense played really well to limit Albany to only 32 points and realistically 25 points when you consider the first touchdown was a kick return. But Nashville's defense played pretty well, but the offense just couldn't get much going until it was too late. But wide receiver Milton Williams, he ended up having 12 catches for 83 yards and a touchdown. So 12 catches is a ton. Getting only 83 yards on those 12 catches, not great. But he was basically the only receiver that was really seeing any action in the Nashville offense. So the health of the 2 quarterbacks for Nashville is the biggest question mark. And if all is well and they're both healthy, you'd love to see them use Ramon Atkins to his full potential in terms of being a dual threat. But if they're just going to have whoever the quarterback for Nashville is be a pocket passer, you got to look towards Dalton Oliver moving forward. But again, both of them are hurt, so maybe they bring in a third option that's fully healthy moving forward. I don't know, but Nashville's had a tough string of games, and depending on how the playoff situation works out with the league this year, with the reduced amount of teams, they're probably on the outside looking in. Next game we're going to talk about is the Billings Outlaws at the West Texas Desert Hawks, and Billings won this game 56-49, so a much higher scoring game than the Albany Nashville game. And starting off with Billings, Billings was in control of this game entering the fourth quarter. They had West Texas in their grip. Billings was 100% in control. So don't let the 7-point difference in the final score fool you. West Texas made a valiant effort to come back and to make it interesting, but Billings was in control. In the second and third quarters, Billings outscored West Texas 42-12. So they went on a run in the middle of the game, and they had control. They were able to run the ball effectively. They were able to pass the ball efficiently. Isaac Harker went 13 for 21 for 154 passing yards and 5 touchdowns. Running back, linebacker, defensive line, utility man, Iron Man, everything. Hunter Swoboda, he had 10 rushes for 49 yards and 2 touchdowns, including one where he ripped it for 20, 30 plus on his way to a touchdown. And wide receiver Carrance Higgins, he had 5 catches for 59 yards and 3 touchdowns. So this was a great team win by the Billings Outlaws. The defense played really well. It's a little deceiving seeing 49 on the scoreboard and saying that the defense played well, but that was the case here. Billings played well in all 3 phases of the game, and that's something they continue to do week after week. They play well on offense, they play well on defense, and special teams does what they need to do. So I think that's the biggest thing right now that separates Billings from Albany when you look at the undefeated teams and who's the better team, Albany versus Billings. We'll find out in a couple weeks when they play, but for me, Billings is the clear number 1 team in the AFL because they're able to play these complete team games. But the difference maker between Albany and Billings for me right now, Albany has way too many penalties called against them, while Billings plays a much cleaner game. And when you look at Billings, they look like a much more traditional AFL team, which makes sense when you look at the coaching staff, Cedric Walker, Cedric Bonner. But the biggest question mark for Billings up to this point was, well, who have they played? That some of the teams that they beat haven't been the best teams, and one of the wins was a forfeit win versus a team they probably would have smoked in Rapid City. But this game against West Texas should answer some of that. West Texas is a very good team, and Billings came in and they controlled the game. They got off to a little bit of a rough start, but they maintained their composure and went on that 42-12 scoring run in the middle of the game. And West Texas did mount a little bit of a comeback, but Billings had a couple plays late where they had a play specifically. It was 4th down. They were trying to run the clock and really ice the game. They ran a play action fake with a toss to the end zone. They ended up scoring a touchdown that put them up 2 possessions late and ended up sealing it for them. So Billings, they play very aggressive on offense. They play very aggressive on defense, but not overly aggressive on either side to the point where they're amassing all these penalties, which isn't necessarily the case for a team like Albany, where they're very aggressive on offense, very aggressive on defense, but they kind of get in their own way with the penalties. They look the most like a traditional AFL team. Albany looks great. Albany looks very close to like a traditional AFL team. They embrace the spirit of the AFL team in multiple ways. But to me, Billings is the clear number 1 team in the league, and I'm very excited to see both of those teams play. But back to this game, West Texas made it interesting late, but they were just in too big of a hole. Like I said, Billings went on a 42-12 run to really blow things open, and West Texas was clawing back and fighting back. Quarterback Jonathan Bain ended up with 273 passing yards and 6 touchdowns, with wide receiver Caleb Smith accounting for 130 of those yards and 4 of those touchdowns. West Texas, they've had some tough losses to the Orlando Predators, the Albany Firebirds, and the Billings Outlaws now. So the losses that they have are to some quality teams. The teams that they've won against, not as quality. So it's an interesting situation developing now where West Texas can beat up on some of the lesser teams, but seem to struggle against some of the better teams. But the season still have a couple games left in the season. So if Again, kind of going back to how the playoffs are going to shape up and what that looks like. West Texas is probably going to get in if it's a 4-team playoff, but considering the fact that they can't seem to get it done against some of these better teams, that's a little bit problematic. Then the last game we're going to talk about is the Salina Liberty at the Southwest Kansas Storm. And Southwest Kansas won this game 34-31. So starting off with Southwest Kansas, they played great defense, and that's thanks in part to the return of DB Michael Lawson. Earlier this week, I just posted a reel on Instagram, so go check it out at Off the Wall FB about some of the interceptions that Michael Lawson was able to pull down in this game, and he is the X factor for this team and this defense. So on the day, Southwest Kansas's defense had 4 sacks and 3 interceptions, and with Lawson out there, they are just a very strong defensive team. The primary game that Lawson missed was against Albany, and Albany ended up scoring 66 on Southwest Kansas. So the fact that when he's in the mix, they are a much better team, that bodes well, because in addition to the 2 interceptions he had in this game, he had 3 or 4 early on in the season. So he's accounted for 6, 7, 8 turnovers at this point when you include forced fumbles as well. So he is an X factor. He is a difference maker for this team. And on offense, Southwest Kansas is still kind of figuring things out, especially at quarterback. Caden Walters started the game, but Matt Struck finished the game. Matt Struck ultimately had a better game and scored a couple touchdowns, but it's really hard to be competitive in any league at any level, but especially the AFL, if you don't have a true QB1. But despite that, they made it work this time. Wide receivers Todd Athey and Eugene Mentor combined for 11 catches for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns, which was just enough for Southwest Kansas to pull off the win. And they had a game-winning drive where they drove the length of the field and kicked that game-winning field goal and held on. So there's a much-needed win for Southwest Kansas to get some positive momentum and maybe shake things up and sneak into whatever the playoff picture ends up looking like for the AFL. But on Salina's end, their quarterback Charles McCollum, he got hit hard, and he presumably left the game with an injury because of that, and it was an uphill battle ever since. The backup came in and didn't perform at his best. He was put into a tough spot against a very good Southwest Kansas defense. Tracy Brooks, who's like a hybrid running back / wide receiver for Salina, he ended up having 7 catches for 67 yards, and he was able to make the offense click a little bit, but turnovers ultimately killed them. They had 3 interceptions on the day, and Southwest Kansas didn't have any turnovers. So that ended up being the difference. And when you consider that it was only a 3-point game, you take away one of those turnovers for Salina, and this could potentially be a game where Salina wins this game by 1 possession instead of losing it. So tough one for Salina, but a much needed win for Southwest Kansas for sure. So we're not clear on what the AFL playoff picture is going to be just yet. We don't know if it's going to be just 2 teams make it, and that's the Arena Bowl, 4 teams make it, and then they play to see who plays in the Arena Bowl. That's probably the most likely one, but with only 9 teams, who knows at this point. But just run through the standings as they are now. Albany's sitting at 6-0. Billings is sitting at 5-2. Salina and Orlando are both sitting at 3-2. West Texas sitting at 3-3. Southwest Kansas also sitting at 3-3. Nashville sitting at 2-4. Wichita sitting at 1-3, and then Washington at 1-4. So Albany and Billings are at the top here, and it seems like the 3 and 4 spots on the presumed playoff picture are up for grabs amongst 6 different teams. So going from Salina at 3-2 to even Nashville at 2-4, everything's up for grabs, and no team is necessarily out of it just yet. So it's going to be an exciting sprint to the finish after a very chaotic start to the season, but seems like we're starting to get the pieces in place at all levels of the AFL, especially with the leadership at the commissioner and some of the hires that are being made and announced this week, starting to get some consistency and starting to get some clarity on some things. So AFL should finish strong, and finishing strong is what they need. And hopefully some of the games that are on the schedule going forward will be able to provide some good finishes. And that's the show. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you again to LJ McConnell for hanging out and talking about his football journey. Again, go follow LJ. Go follow the Unphazed Podcast. Go tell them you heard them on Off the Wall. Tell them Trey says hi. But yeah, IFL Week 13 should be a pretty good one. AFL Week 7. Hopefully the schedule sticks. We're starting to see a little bit more consistency, so hopefully that sticks. Should have some good games coming up as well for each of those. Almost all the games are going to be on YouTube, so if you haven't checked out any arena football yet this season, it's starting to calm down a little bit, so go check out some of the games on the Arena Football League's YouTube channel, and the IFL is always on YouTube as well, so go check out some of those games that are happening this upcoming weekend. And as a reminder, once again, if you're not following us on social, please go do that on Instagram, Twitter /X, or TikTok at Off the Wall FB, F as in foot, B as in ball. Posting all sorts of stuff on each of those. And even if you don't use, if you have a Twitter and don't use it, give us a follow. Just boost our numbers a little bit, please. Come on, help your boy out. But there's only 24 hours in a week, and then the fact that you chose to spend like an hour and a half, hour 40, whatever this ends up being, with us on Off the Wall here, or even if you just listen to the 30 minutes of the LJ interview. Appreciate you checking it out. Appreciate you following along on this journey that we're on with indoor and arena football. Excited for what's ahead, both on and off the field. And yeah, we're excited to keep this thing going. So thank you so much for checking it out. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye.